Howdy, friends and neighbors. Y'all caught me just in time. For those that don't know me, I'm Ronnie Mann. Tell you a little bit about myself. I'm eighth of 11 children, born near a little town called Dungannon, Virginia. That's in Scott County in the southwestern tip of the state of Virginia. And I want to share a little bit about my life. And you know what they say, truth is stranger than fiction. So what I'm about to tell you, it happened. And I had a lot of interesting things that's went down in my life, and it's been book material by my beliefs anyway. And those that of you that know me, you know that um, I've had a pretty unique experience in life. Spent almost 20 years in coal mines, and but I graduated high school, Twin Springs High School, in 1973, and up until then, um, we lived in a little four-room house in Scott County, a little community called Hardwood, and it was pretty unique being in a small house with so many um, family members and my mom and dad and all of us kids. And there was never more than 10 at home at any one time, but still made for a pretty large um, family and such a small house. And in 1963, in June, our house caught fire and burned to the ground. That's another story within itself. And we had to move out of the little holler we lived in and moved up into town about 2.5 miles away. And it was a scary time for us, but it was one of the best things I think that's probably happened to us was get us um, out in the open, and we can make money, help our mom survive, and we could mow yards and work on farms, work for farmers, and opportunities we weren't aware of until that happened. And when I was about 17, um, one of our big events for the weekend was hang out in front of the hardware right in downtown Dungannon. And a railroad came through there. And the Clinch River came through Dungannon, right at the edge of Dungannon. And so some buddies of mine and I were sitting in front of the hardware. And there was Roger and Jimmy and myself. And we heard a horse coming out of the darkness. It was nighttime, late uh, Saturday night, 10 o'clock-ish. And we heard this horse come clanging down the road, and old buddy George was up on the horse, and he had a sidekick like Tonto, but his sidekick wasn't on a horse. His sidekick was Paul, and Paul was on foot running along beside George. And the horse belonged to Con Banner. Um, Actually was a relative of Con Banner's, Mr. Banner, that had a farm there, and George had borrowed his horse. And anyway, he was out riding his stud around. And George, real loud, vocal kind of guy, and boisterous, to say the least. And he said, boys, y'all want to have some fun? And I didn't like the sound of that. But Jimmy, he was in for fun if it meant being mischievous. And Jimmy said, "What'd you have in mind, George?" And he said, "Well, over at the river bridge on the Clinch, a lot of campers camping out. It's a real warm summer night, and was a real popular fishing area over there. And a lot of out of towners would come and camp out and stay the weekend, and they would fish. So we agreed to go check it out. It's about a quarter of a mile away. So we took off in that way. George riding that horse that was very spirited, and prancing along. And so we made our way over to the river bridge. And sure enough, on both sides of the river, there were campfires and Coleman lanterns and people fishing, doing night fishing. You could see the fishing poles and line going out into the water. And Jimmy, when he walked up onto the bridge, as he was walking onto the bridge, there was a signpost there in the ground at the entrance of the bridge. And Jimmy goes over to the signpost and grabs hold of it, and he wallows it out of the ground and pulls it out. He's a big old burly guy. He pulls that signpost up out of the ground. Well, it's nighttime. The folks down on the river couldn't see what was going on. The bridge was a good 20 or 25 feet above the water. And but people down there were aware that somebody was up on the bridge, but they really couldn't. There was no street lights or anything, so they couldn't make us out. So we went out onto the bridge and staged a fight, pretending like a big fight broke out. George was prancing around in circles on that horse and that big old steel bridge, and the horseshoes were clanging on the pavement, and it was very loud. And the fight was going on. I mean, it was like somebody was really getting it on, and yelling, cussing, and hollering and back and forth, and George yelling, "Hit him!" and Paul yelling, "I'm going to hit him. I'll hit you back." And they were wrestling, and George said, "Get back out of the way." He said, "I'll just kill him." And George had a sawed-off shotgun, and he was sitting up on that horse, and he fired that shotgun down the river. And Jimmy yells out, "You killed him." And George said, "I meant to kill him." He said, "What we do now?" And George said, "Throw him in the river." And so Jimmy picks up that signpost, and of course the folks on the ground down by the water couldn't make out anything other than what they could hear. And they could just see a silhouette of men fighting up on the bridge against the sky, a light sky. And Jimmy tosses that signpost into the water, sounded like a body hitting the water. And the people on the ground, the campers, they started yelling, and somebody fired a gun. I heard a gun go off. It sounded like a 38. And we're going to call the law. Well, there was no cell phones or cell service. Our nearest phone was over in town at a phone booth. There's only one in town. And we took off running. And by the time the signpost hit the water, we were already halfway back to the hardware. And so we ran back to the hardware and sitting there on the sidewalk and like nothing happened. And Dungannon turned back into a sleepy little town. George said, "I got to get out of town." So he and his horse and sidekick Paul, they vanished into the darkness, headed back toward his house. And, and he's the next thing we knew, it was time for us to split as well. So we went our respective ways, and as though nothing ever happened. But anyway, that's my little story for today. I wanted to share that with you, and I hope you enjoyed, because truth is indeed stranger than fiction. And I'm Ronnie Mann. I'm glad you were able to enjoy that. Have a great day.